Have you ever heard a strange cry in the dead of night, carried on the wind from a nearby river or lake? A sound that chills you to the bone, a wail of pure despair that seems to echo from another world. If you live in Latin America, or even parts of the southwestern United States, you might have been warned as a child. Be good, or La Llorona will get you. This isn't just some simple ghost story told to scare kids into behaving. The legend of the Weeping Woman is one of the most enduring and terrifying tales in folklore. It's a story that has been passed down through generations, evolving and twisting, but always retaining its core of tragedy and horror. Tonight, we're going to peel back the layers of this legend, look into its murky origins, and uncover the even darker presence that might be lurking just behind her ghostly tears. Most versions of the story begin with a woman of breathtaking beauty named Maria. She lived in a small village, and her grace and charm were known far and wide. She dreamed of a life beyond her humble beginnings, a life of wealth and status. One day, her dreams seemed to come true. A wealthy and handsome nobleman rode into her village. He was captivated by Maria's beauty, and she, in turn, was swept off her feet by his charm and promises of a grand life. Ignoring the warnings of her family and the customs of her people, Maria married the nobleman. For a time, their life was a fairy tale. They had 2 beautiful sons, and Maria felt she had everything she ever wanted. But as time went on, the nobleman's passion began to cool. He was a man of the world, and the quiet life of a husband and father started to bore him. He began spending more and more time away, traveling, hunting, and carousing with his aristocratic friends. When he was home, he paid attention only to his sons, often ignoring Maria completely. Maria's love slowly curdled into a bitter mix of jealousy and resentment. She saw her sons as the only remaining link to the man she loved, but also as the reason he favored them over her. Her mind, once filled with love, was now consumed by a desperate, twisting rage. One fateful evening, Maria was walking with her 2 young sons along a riverbank. She saw her husband's carriage approaching, but he wasn't alone. Beside him sat a beautiful, younger woman, laughing and smiling at him. The sight shattered what was left of Maria's heart. In a fit of uncontrollable rage and despair, a madness she couldn't contain, she turned on the very things her husband cherished most, their children. She grabbed her 2 small sons and, in a blind fury, threw them into the raging river. As the current swept them away, their cries fading into the gurgle of the water, the fog of Maria's rage finally lifted. The horror of what she had done crashed down on her with the force of a tidal wave. She ran frantically along the riverbank, her hands outstretched, screaming their names into the darkness. Ay, mis hijos, mis hijos. Oh, my children, my children. But it was too late. They were gone. Consumed by guilt and sorrow, Maria spent the rest of her days and nights wandering the riverbanks, weeping and searching, her beautiful clothes turning to rags, her body growing thin and frail. She refused to eat or sleep, her only purpose to find the children she had lost. Finally, her mortal body gave out, and she collapsed and died on the same riverbank where she had committed her horrific act. But her story doesn't end there. It's said that when Maria reached the gates of heaven, she was asked a simple question: "Where are your children?" Unable to answer, she was denied entry. She was condemned to wander the earth, trapped between the world of the living and the dead, eternally searching for the souls of her drowned sons. And so, she became La Llorona, the Weeping Woman, a ghostly apparition, often described as a tall, slender figure in a flowing white gown, her face obscured by a veil, or by the long, dark hair that hides her terrifying, featureless visage. Her most defining feature, though, is the sound that precedes her, a heart-wrenching, soul-piercing wail of a Miss He-Ho's. Parents have used this story for centuries to warn their children away from rivers and lakes after dark. They say if you hear her cry, you must run in the opposite direction. If her cry sounds far away, she is actually very close. If it sounds close, you might still have a chance to escape. It's said she's drawn to the sound of crying children, sometimes mistaking them for her own. In the most terrifying versions of the tale, she will snatch a living child and drown them in the same waters, hoping their soul can replace one of her own and finally grant her peace. The legend of La Llorona is incredibly widespread, with variations found all over Mexico, Central, and South America. In some versions, she was an Aztec princess who betrayed her people to the Spanish conquistadors. In others, she's a more sympathetic figure, a poor woman wronged by a powerful man. But the core elements remain: a beautiful woman, a betrayal, drowned children, and an eternal, weeping search. This consistency has led historians and folklorists to look for deeper origins. Could La Llorona be a lingering echo of something much, much older? Many believe she is linked to ancient Aztec goddesses. One prominent figure is Cihuatedio, the spirits of women who died in childbirth. These spirits were said to haunt crossroads at night, stealing children and causing sickness. Another, perhaps even more direct, connection is to the Aztec goddess Cotlaquil, also known as Tonantzin, the mother of the gods. Spanish friars who arrived after the conquest of Mexico wrote about an Aztec goddess who was heard weeping in the night, crying out for her lost children just before the Spanish arrived. She was seen as a harbinger of doom, a sign that the Aztec Empire was about to fall. Is it possible that as the Spanish spread Catholicism, these powerful, feared female deities were demoted, transformed by the new culture into a cautionary tale? A ghost, a demon. The vengeful, powerful goddess became the tragic, murderous mother. This is where the story takes an even darker turn. Beyond the tragic ghost of a grieving mother, some interpretations of the legend suggest that something else is at play. Think about the moment of the crime, an act of such unspeakable horror, committed in a fit of rage so profound it completely overtakes a mother's love. What if it wasn't just human emotion? What if, in her moment of ultimate despair and jealousy, Maria opened a door to something else? In many traditions, bodies of water are seen as liminal spaces, thresholds between worlds. Rivers, in particular, are powerful symbols of life, death, and the passage of time. They can give life, but they can also take it away in an instant. It's believed that dark entities are drawn to places of intense emotional turmoil and tragedy. Imagine Maria, standing at the river's edge, her heart overflowing with a poison of rage and grief. Her cries and curses might have been more than just expressions of human pain. They might have been an unwitting invitation, a call into the abyss, and something answered. This theory suggests that the entity we know as La Llorona isn't just the spirit of Maria. Instead, Maria's soul might have been consumed or fused with a much older, more malevolent water spirit, an entity that feeds on sorrow and despair, one that was already lurking in the depths of that river, waiting for a vessel. This entity saw in Maria the perfect conduit, a soul already shattered by grief and capable of an ultimate act of darkness. So, when you hear that wail in the night, is it the ghost of a mother eternally regretting her actions? Or is it the triumphant cry of an ancient predator, wearing the memory of Maria like a mask, forever luring new victims to the water's edge? This entity wouldn't be searching for her children to find peace. It would be hunting, using the powerful lure of a mother's grief to perpetuate its own cycle of death and sorrow. It offers no forgiveness, no redemption, only a watery grave. This interpretation adds a chilling new dimension to the legend. It means La Llorona isn't just a ghost to be pitied or feared. She's a trap. Her weeping isn't a sign of her own suffering, but a siren's call, designed to draw in the curious and the compassionate. It explains why she's so dangerous, why her sorrow never ends, because the sorrow isn't the point. The hunt is, whether she is a grieving mother, a transformed goddess, or a vessel for an ancient evil. The legend of La Llorona continues to haunt the dark and lonely places of the world. It serves as a powerful reminder of the darkness that can lie within the human heart and the ancient mysteries that may still dwell in the waters of our world. So the next time you're near a river at night and you hear a faint mournful cry, don't try to be a hero. Don't go looking for the source. Just turn around, walk away, and be grateful you can. Because you never know if it's the ghost of a weeping woman, or the thing that answered her call. Thank you for joining me in the shadows tonight. If you enjoyed this journey into the dark, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration of the world's most terrifying legends. Stay safe out there. Have you ever heard a wail in the dead of night? A sound so full of sorrow it freezes your blood? A chilling cry that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. If you have, you might have been in the presence of La Llorona, the weeping woman. Her legend has echoed through the centuries, a terrifying bedtime story for some, and a very real phantom for others. But who is she, and why does she weep? Tonight, we journey into the heart of one of the most enduring and frightening ghost stories of the Americas. The story begins, as many do, with a woman of breathtaking beauty. Her name was Maria, living in a humble village. Her grace and charm were known far and wide. She dreamed of a life beyond her simple means, a life of luxury and love. And one day, it seemed her dreams were about to come true. A wealthy and handsome nobleman rode into town. He was captivated by Maria's beauty, and she was equally enchanted by his status and charm. Against the advice of her family and the whispers of the village, they began a passionate romance. The nobleman showered her with gifts and attention, and soon, he asked for her hand in marriage. Maria was overjoyed. They married, and for a time, their life was a fairy tale. They had 2 beautiful sons, and Maria dedicated herself to them completely. Her world revolved around her children. However, the nobleman's nature began to show. He was a man of the world, accustomed to a life of travel and socializing with the elite. The simple domestic life with Maria began to bore him. He started spending long periods away, leaving Maria and their sons alone for weeks, sometimes months at a time. When he did return, his affection for Maria had cooled significantly. He would dote on their sons, showering them with presents and attention, but he barely acknowledged Maria. His indifference grew into open contempt. He spoke of leaving her to marry a woman of his own class, a woman of wealth and status. Maria's heart, once full of love, began to fill with a toxic mix of jealousy, rage, and despair. Her world was crumbling. The man she had given everything for was abandoning her, and the life she had dreamed of was turning into a nightmare. One beautiful afternoon, Maria was walking with her 2 sons along the riverbank. It was a place where she and the nobleman had shared many happy moments in the early days of their love. As they walked, a fancy carriage approached. Inside was her husband, and next to him sat a beautiful, elegantly dressed younger woman. He stopped the carriage to speak to his sons, smiling and laughing with them. But he looked right through Maria, as if she were a ghost, a stranger on the side of the road. Then, he galloped away with his new love, leaving Maria consumed by a blinding, all-consuming rage. In that moment, something inside her snapped. The pain and betrayal were too much to bear. She turned her fury on the source of her husband's lingering affection. the one thing tying him to her, their children. In a fit of madness, she grabbed her 2 young sons and, despite their screams and struggles, she threw them into the raging river. As the current swept them away, the reality of her monstrous act crashed down upon her. The fog of rage lifted, replaced by an unbearable wave of horror and guilt. She ran frantically along the riverbank, screaming their names, reaching into the water, but it was too late. They were gone. Her desperate cries of, "Ay, mis hijos, my children," echoed through the valley. Overcome with grief and remorse, she collapsed and, some say, drowned herself in the very same river that had claimed her sons. But her story doesn't end there. In fact, that's where her legend truly begins. Because of her terrible sin, Maria was denied entry into the afterlife. She was condemned to roam the earth, trapped between the world of the living and the dead. She became La Llorona, the weeping woman, now a ghostly specter. She is eternally searching for her lost children. Her spirit is forever bound to waterways, rivers, lakes, and streams. She wanders their banks in the dead of night, draped in a long white gown, her face hidden in shadow, her body thin and skeletal, and she is always weeping. Her mournful cry, "Ay, mis hijos," has become a chilling omen. Those who hear it are filled with a sense of dread. The sound is said to drift on the wind, sometimes seeming far away, and then suddenly, right beside you. The closer her cry sounds, the farther away she is. But if her wail sounds distant and faint, beware. It means she is very, very close. Legend says that to see her is to invite misfortune or even death. The most terrifying part of her legend is what happens when she mistakes other children for her own. Parents in many cultures have used the story of La Llorona for generations to warn their children not to stay out after dark, not to wander off alone, and especially to stay away from the water's edge. They say that if La Llorona finds a child wandering alone at night, she might snatch them up, thinking they are her own, and in her grief-stricken confusion, drag them to a watery grave, just as she did her own sons. The tale of La Llorona has countless variations across Mexico, Central and South America, and even in the southwestern United States. In some versions, she wasn't a humble villager, but an indigenous woman who fell in love with a Spanish conquistador. In others, she didn't drown her children in a fit of rage, but they drowned accidentally while she was meeting with a lover. Despite these differences, the core elements remain the same: a beautiful woman, a tragic betrayal, the loss of her children by water, and her eternal, weeping search. But is La Llorona just a cautionary tale? A ghost story to keep kids in line? For many, she is much more. There are countless eyewitness accounts from people who swear they have seen her ghostly form or heard her unmistakable, bone-chilling cry. People have reported seeing a white figure gliding over the water, hearing wails that no animal could make, or feeling a sudden, inexplicable coldness in the air near a river at night. These experiences are often so profound that they turn skeptics into believers. The legend speaks to some of our deepest fears: the loss of a child, the pain of betrayal, and the idea of an eternal, restless punishment. Maria's story is a tragedy of a woman driven to an unthinkable act by desperation and a broken heart. Her spirit, La Llorona, serves as a powerful and terrifying symbol of eternal grief and remorse. She is a permanent fixture in the cultural landscape, her story passed down through song, film, and whispered tales around a campfire. So, the next time you find yourself near a quiet river, late at night, listen closely. If you hear the faint sound of a woman crying in the distance, a wail that carries on the wind and pierces the silence, don't try to find its source. Turn around, go back inside and lock your doors. Because it might be La Llorona, the weeping woman, forever searching for the children she can never get back. And you don't want to be the one she finds instead. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the darkness. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration of the world's most terrifying legends. Stay safe out there. Have you ever heard a faint, mournful cry carried on the wind late at night? A sound that chills you to your very core? It might just be the most famous ghost in Latin America, La Llorona, the weeping woman. The most common version of her story is a tragic one. It tells of a beautiful woman named Maria, who fell deeply in love with a wealthy nobleman. They had 2 sons, and for a time, she was happy. But her husband's love faded. He grew distant, spending less and less time at home. One day, Maria saw him riding in a carriage with another, more elegant woman. In a fit of uncontrollable rage and despair, she took her own children to the river and drowned them. When the horrific reality of her actions set in, she was consumed by guilt and drowned herself as well. But she was denied entry to the afterlife. Now, she is cursed to wander the earth for eternity, forever searching for her lost children. Ere ghostly wail, I, mis hijos, all my children, can be heard near rivers and lakes, a terrifying warning to all who hear it. But the tale of La Llorona isn't just one single story. It's a legend that has evolved and spread, with different versions taking root in various regions. In some parts of Mexico, her origins are tied to ancient Aztec mythology. Some scholars believe she is a modern interpretation of the goddess Cihuatatio, divine beings who died in childbirth and were said to haunt crossroads, stealing children. Another theory links her to La Malinche, the indigenous woman who served as an interpreter for Hernan courts during the Spanish conquest. In this version, her betrayal of her people is twisted into the betrayal of her own children, forever weeping for the loss of her culture and her offspring. In other countries, her story changes even more. In Venezuela, La Llorona is sometimes said to lure away unfaithful men, a spirit of vengeance rather than just sorrow. In Colombia, some tales say she targets children who misbehave or wander off alone after dark. A cautionary tale for kids to obey their parents. These regional variations show how deeply the legend has woven itself into the fabric of local cultures, adapting to reflect their unique fears and values. And don't think La Llorona is just a relic of the past. Modern encounters are reported all the time. People driving on lonely country roads at night claim to see a woman in a white dress walking by the roadside, only for her to vanish when they get closer. Fishermen and campers have sworn they've heard her unmistakable cries echoing across the water, sending them scrambling back to safety. Some have even reported seeing wet footprints appear out of nowhere in their homes. Whether she's a heartbroken mother, an avenging spirit, or a cultural warning, the legend of the weeping woman continues to haunt us, a timeless reminder of love, loss, and eternal sorrow. Warning, from this point forward, the legend changes, because what began beside rivers no longer stays there, and those who encounter the weeping woman often discover the horror does not end when they leave the water behind. It follows them. Reports from the late 1800s describe travelers who heard distant crying while crossing bridges at night only to experience misfortune days later, sudden illness, accidents, or unexplained deaths within their families, as if the encounter marked them in some way. One famous account tells of a merchant traveling by carriage who heard a woman sobbing beneath a bridge. Ignoring warnings, he climbed down with a lantern and saw a woman kneeling beside the water, calling out for her children. When he asked what had happened, she slowly turned toward him, her face pale and dripping, and whispered, "Have you seen my sons?" The merchant later claimed he felt overwhelming pity and pointed toward the riverbank behind him, hoping to comfort her, but the moment he did, icy hands gripped his ankles and pulled him into the water. His body was found days later downstream, his face frozen in terror, his fingernails torn, as if he had clawed desperately against unseen hands. But even stranger are modern accounts, where there is no river nearby at all. In the 1970s, a family living in a dry desert town began hearing crying outside their home every night at exactly 3 a.m. At first they assumed it was an animal until their young son woke screaming, claiming a woman was standing in his room dripping wet, asking where her children were. The parents dismissed it as imagination until they discovered wet footprints leading from the boy's bedroom window across the floor, even though the house was locked and the ground outside completely dry. Over the following weeks, appliances malfunctioned, lights flickered, and the sound of sobbing echoed through empty rooms. Finally, the family priest visited and claimed the house felt heavy, as though something deeply sorrowful lingered there. After prayers were performed, the disturbances stopped, but neighbors reported hearing crying near a nearby irrigation canal soon afterward, suggesting whatever haunted the house simply moved on. Paranormal researchers studying these incidents noticed a disturbing pattern. Sightings often follow individuals who have recently experienced guilt or personal tragedy, as if the spirit is drawn to emotional pain. Some believe Maria's eternal search for her children traps her in an endless cycle, causing her to mistake living children for her own, but others think something darker is happening, that whatever presence lives beneath the waters uses her sorrow as bait, drawing people closer to claim new victims. One chilling highway encounter from the early 2000s involved a truck driver crossing a remote road at night when he saw a woman in white standing beside the road holding two small figures. Assuming they were stranded travelers, he stopped to help, but as he stepped out, the figures vanished, leaving the woman alone, staring at him with hollow eyes before screaming, "Where are they?" The driver fled in terror, yet later that night, he heard crying outside his motel room door. When he opened it, the hallway was empty, but soaked with water, as if someone dripping wet had just walked away. Even more disturbing are stories from children who claim to see the weeping woman in dreams before someone close to them dies, as though her presence foretells tragedy. In one documented case, a young girl repeatedly dreamed of a crying woman standing beside her bed warning that the river is hungry. Days later, the child's cousin drowned during a family trip, despite being a strong swimmer in shallow water. Some investigators now suspect the legend is less about one ghost, and more about a curse tied to guilt, loss, and unresolved sorrow. Emotions powerful enough to manifest something supernatural, something that feeds on human suffering. In certain regions, elders warn children never to answer crying voices at night, claiming the spirit can mimic familiar voices to lure victims outside. Several disappearances have reportedly begun with family members hearing loved ones calling from outdoors, only to find no one there and the missing person later discovered near water. The most terrifying modern report comes from security camera footage captured outside an apartment complex where residents complained of late-night crying. The footage shows a woman in white walking slowly across the parking lot, her feet never touching the ground, before she suddenly turns toward the camera, revealing an empty face where eyes should be, and then vanishes instantly. Moments later, alarms triggered throughout the building, and several residents reported nightmares of drowning. Psychologists attempt to explain these stories as mass hysteria or folklore passed through generations. Yet, recordings continue to surface. Photographs appear online, and witnesses from different cultures describe nearly identical encounters without prior knowledge of the legend. Whether Maria's spirit truly wanders the world, searching endlessly for forgiveness, or whether something far older now wears her grief like a mask, remains unknown. But one warning appears in nearly every version of the tale. If you hear a woman crying alone at night, especially near water, do not follow the sound, do not answer her calls, and never offer help, because once she looks at you, she may believe you are one of her lost children, and then she will try to take you with her back into the dark waters, where sorrow never ends. And in the next part of our investigation, we uncover cases where people claim they escaped her grasp, only to discover the nightmare had just begun. Subscribe to Tales of the Dark, where every story gives you a nightmare. In the quiet corners of the night, where shadows stretch and moonlight fears to tread, a wail echoes through time. It's a sound that crawls under your skin, a lament born of profound sorrow and eternal regret. This is the cry of La Llorona, the weeping woman, a specter forever bound to the waterways of the world, searching for the children she lost. Her story is whispered from generation to generation, a chilling cautionary tale that begins with a woman named Maria. In life, she was renowned for her breathtaking beauty, a beauty so profound it was said to rival the stars. She fell in love with a wealthy nobleman, a man of high standing who was captivated by her grace. They married, and for a time, their life was idyllic. They had 2 beautiful sons, and Maria's world was complete. But happiness, like a river, can change its course. Her husband, a man accustomed to the thrill of adventure and the company of high society, began to drift away. His visits grew infrequent, his affections cooled, and when he did return, it was only to see his sons, barely acknowledging the woman who had once been the center of his universe. One fateful evening, Maria was walking with her 2 boys along the riverbank when she saw her husband's carriage approaching. But he was not alone. Beside him sat another woman, younger, elegant, and adorned in finery. He smiled at his sons, waved, but his gaze passed over Maria as if she were a ghost already. In that moment, something inside her shattered. A tempest of jealousy, betrayal, and rage consumed her. In a fit of madness she could not control, she turned on the very source of her husband's remaining affection, her children. She seized her 2 small sons and, in a blind fury, threw them into the churning, murky river. As the current swept them away, their small cries fading into the gurgle of the water, the fog of her rage lifted. The horror of her actions crashed down upon her with the force of a tidal wave. She ran along the river's edge, her arms outstretched, her voice tearing through the night with their names. Mis hijos? Ay, mis hijos. Where are my children? But the river offered no answer, only the cold, dark silence of its depths. Stricken with a grief too heavy for any mortal heart to bear, she collapsed on the riverbank and wept until her own life ebbed away. But death offered no peace. Because of her horrific deed, she was denied entry into the afterlife. She was condemned to wander the earth, trapped between the world of the living and the dead, eternally searching for the children she murdered. Her beautiful form decayed into a skeletal specter, her once fine gown now a tattered, ghostly white shroud. And so, she weeps. She wanders the riverbanks, the lake shores, and the dark, wet places of the world. Her mournful cry a warning to all who hear it. The encounters with La Llorona are as varied as they are terrifying. In a small town nestled by the Rio Grande, a group of teenage boys, full of bravado, decided to test the legend. They drove down to the oldest part of the river, a place their grandparents warned them about, where the cypress trees weep moss into the still water. They cut the engine, rolled down the windows, and waited. Their jokes and laughter slowly dying as the silence of the night pressed in on them. Then they heard it. A faint, distant sound, like the wind whistling through a crack. It grew louder, resolving into a woman's sob, a sound so filled with pain it made their blood run cold. they saw a figure emerge from the mist rising off the water. A tall, slender woman in white, her face obscured by a veil of long black hair. She seemed to glide rather than walk, her feet never touching the ground. As she drifted closer, one of the boys, braver, or perhaps more foolish than the rest, shone a flashlight at her. The beam illuminated a face not of flesh, but of bone, with hollow sockets that seemed to suck the light from the air. A horrifying guttural shriek erupted from her, a sound that wasn't human. They didn't need a second warning. The driver fumbled with the keys, the engine roaring to life as they sped away, the chilling wail chasing them until they reached the safety of the town's lights. For weeks, none of them could sleep without hearing that cry in their dreams, a permanent echo in their minds. But her targets are not always those who seek her out. Sometimes, she finds you. A young woman named Sophia was driving home late, one rainy night. A detour had forced her onto a lonely back road that ran parallel to a deep irrigation canal. Her car's radio fizzled out, replaced by static. Annoyed, she turned it off, and in the sudden quiet, she heard weeping. It sounded like it was coming from right outside her window. She glanced at her passenger seat and screamed. Sitting there soaking wet was a woman in a tattered white dress, her face hidden by matted hair. Sophia slammed on the brakes, her car skidding to a halt. When she dared to look again, the seat was empty. But a puddle of murky water remained, and the chilling scent of damp earth and decay filled the car. Shaking, Sophia drove the rest of the way home, never once looking in her rearview mirror. The next day, she sold the car. She couldn't stand to even sit in it, feeling the phantom cold of that spectral passenger. She says that sometimes, on rainy nights, she still smells the river and hears a faint, sorrowful cry on the wind. The psychological toll on those who survive an encounter is profound. They are marked by it. Many report a lingering sense of melancholy, a deep, unshakable sadness that wasn't there before. Others develop an intense phobia of water, unable to go near rivers, lakes, or even take a bath without experiencing crippling anxiety. They become susto, a condition in Latin American culture, known as fright sickness, where the soul is believed to have been scared from the body. The experience leaves a spiritual wound, a permanent stain on their psyche. They see her in reflections, in the steam on a bathroom mirror, in the briefest glimpse of white fabric fluttering in their peripheral vision. They are forever looking over their shoulder, forever listening for that mournful cry. The legend of La Llorona has many roots, and some historians trace it back even further, to Aztec mythology. They believe she is a syncretic figure, a blend of indigenous goddesses and European folklore brought by the Spanish. One such goddess is Cihuatateo, the spirits of women who died in childbirth. They were depicted with skeletal faces and were said to steal children and cause sickness. Another is Coatlicue, the mother of the god Huitzilopochtli, a powerful and fearsome earth deity. When the Spanish arrived, these powerful, sometimes terrifying female figures were merged with the story of a spurned woman, creating the La Llorona we know today, a figure embodying betrayal, grief, and the terrifying power of a mother's rage. This is why the story resonates so deeply across cultures. It touches upon primal fears of loss, the darkness that can lie within love, and the chilling idea of a parent turning against their own child. So, if you ever find yourself near a river late at night, and you hear the sound of a woman weeping, don't try to be a hero. Don't go looking for the source. Turn back, run, go towards the light, and do not stop. For she is out there, forever searching, forever weeping, and she might just mistake you for one of her own. Be careful, and stay safe. Have you ever heard a mournful cry echoing in the dead of night? A sound that seems to drift on the water and chill you to the bone. If you have, you might have been closer than you think to one of the most terrifying and tragic figures in folklore, La Llorona, the Weeping Woman. This isn't just a simple ghost story told around a campfire. It's a legend that has haunted generations, a cautionary tale whispered from parent to child, and a chilling presence that many swear is all too real. The story of La Llorona is ancient, with roots stretching back centuries, possibly even to pre-Columbian Aztec mythology. Some scholars connect her to figures like Cihuacotl, an Aztec goddess who was said to weep and wail in the night before major disasters, a harbinger of doom. But the most popular version, the one that has seeped into the very fabric of Hispanic culture, takes place during the Spanish colonial era. It tells the story of a breathtakingly beautiful woman named Maria. Maria came from a humble village, but her beauty was so renowned that it captured the attention of a wealthy and handsome Spanish nobleman, a conquistador. He was utterly captivated by her, showering her with gifts and promises of a life she could only dream of, against the advice of her family, who warned her of the deep social chasm between them. Maria fell deeply in love. They married, and soon, she gave him 2 beautiful sons. For a time, their life was Maria adored her children and was a devoted mother. But as the years went on, the nobleman's ardor cooled. He was a man of high society, and he began to spend more time away, traveling, attending lavish parties, and mingling with people of his own standing. He grew distant, ashamed of Maria's humble origins, and started to openly neglect her and their children. He would visit less and less, and when he did, he would only pay attention to the boys, completely ignoring the woman he once professed to love. The final, devastating blow came when he returned to the village not to see her, but with a new bride, a wealthy lady from his own Spanish class. He callously told Maria that he was leaving her for good, but that he would be taking his sons with him to be raised in high society. In that moment, something inside Maria shattered. Consumed by a storm of rage, grief, and betrayal, she spiraled into madness. She dragged her 2 young sons to the nearby river, the very place where she had once spent happy moments with their father. And in an act of unthinkable horror, blinded by her pain, she drowned them. As the river's current carried their small bodies away, the fog of her madness lifted. The horrifying reality of what she had done crashed down upon her. She ran frantically along the riverbank, screaming their names into the darkness, her hands reaching for the water as if she could pull them back. Her cries of, "I, Miss Hijos. Oh, my children," echoed through the night. Overcome with guilt and despair, she collapsed and died right there on the river's edge. But her tormented spirit found no rest. It is said that when she reached the gates of heaven, she was asked a simple, terrible question: "Where are your children?" Unable to answer, she was condemned to wander the earth for eternity, searching for them. She is trapped between the living world and the spirit world, forever weeping, forever searching along rivers, lakes, and streams. Her beautiful face is now gaunt and skeletal. Her once lovely form, a terrifying skeletal apparition draped in a ghostly white gown. This is the classic legend, but the story of La Llorona doesn't end there. It's a living, breathing part of the culture, especially in Mexico, the American Southwest, and throughout Central and South America. For centuries, parents have used her story to warn children not to wander off alone at night, especially near water. "Behave, or La Llorona will get you," is a phrase that has sent shivers down the spine of many a child. She is the boogeyman, a spectral disciplinarian born of tragedy. What makes this legend so enduring is that people claim to see her, to hear her, to this very day. The accounts are disturbingly similar. It often begins with a faint, mournful cry in the distance, a sound that some mistake for the wind. or a stray animal, but then it grows louder, more distinct, more human. It's the unmistakable sound of a woman sobbing in absolute agony. Those who have heard it describe it as the most heartbreaking and terrifying sound they've ever experienced. Many modern encounters happen near bodies of water, just as the legend dictates. People driving late at night along a river road report seeing a solitary figure in white walking along the shoulder. They slow down, thinking it's someone in trouble, only for the figure to vanish as they get closer. Fishermen and campers have shared stories of being woken in the middle of the night by her chilling cries, forcing them to pack up and flee in terror. In places like San Antonio, Texas, the rivers that wind through the city are considered prime territory for La Llorona. Locals trade stories of her appearances along the San Antonio Riverwalk. One popular account tells of a group of teenagers who dared each other to go to one of the old Spanish missions by the river late at night. They heard the crying, faint at first, then seemingly right next to them. They saw a figure in white rise from the river mist, and they ran for their lives, swearing never to doubt the legend again. In New Mexico, the stories are just as prevalent. A man from Santa Fe shared a story online about his grandfather, who, as a young boy, was walking home late one evening along an irrigation ditch, or acequia. He heard the weeping and saw a tall, thin woman in white gliding towards him. He froze in terror, believing his time was up. But just as she got close, she passed right through a fence and disappeared. His grandfather was so shaken, he didn't speak for 2 days. The legend has also evolved with the times. Some modern interpretations see La Llorona as more than just a monster. They see her as a victim of colonialism and patriarchal betrayal. Her story reflects the struggles of indigenous women who were cast aside by European men. Her eternal weeping isn't just for her lost children, but for a lost culture, a lost identity, and the profound injustice she suffered. This deeper meaning gives the legend a powerful resonance. She is a figure of both terror and sympathy. We fear her ghostly wrath, but we also feel a pang of sorrow for the woman Maria, whose love and devotion were twisted into a curse that has lasted for centuries. So what should you do if you hear her? The stories all agree. Don't investigate. Don't go towards the sound. If you see a lone woman in white by the water late at night, turn and go the other way, because they say, if you see her up close, her face is no longer that of the beautiful Maria, but a horrifying, skeletal visage that can drive you mad. And some of the darkest tellings of the tale warn that if she mistakes you for one of her own lost children, she might just try to drag you into a watery grave to replace them. The legend of La Llorona is a powerful reminder that some stories are more than just stories. They are warnings etched into our collective psyche, carried on the night wind as a mournful cry. So next time you're near a river after dark, listen closely. If you hear a woman weeping, don't be a hero, just run. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into dark folklore, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Stay safe out there.